Welcome, my friends, to Dr. Frank Cutting Edge Medicine. I'm your host, Dr. Frank Miller, coming to you from San Antonio. This show is, today we're going to be on spiritual healing. It's a very special day. We just finished Passover. Today is Easter Sunday. I'm looking at a Jerusalem cross I got on a pilgrimage a couple of years back. And I'm thinking about all the different special things that happened in that city and around that holy area. And we need spiritual healing. You know, healing of the body must include healing of the soul and of the spirit. So we're going to start with a prayer. Lord God, thank you for awakening in us the knowledge that you are there. In a blossom, a bumblebee, the happy chirp of a bird, or the welcome warmth of the sunshine. Yes, all creation cries out your existence and your glory. And this gives us hope. When we have done all that is humanly possible for healing, you are the author of miracles, which start from our love from one another, for one another. Teach us to better unite our spirits with your spirit, so amazing things can happen. We ask this in your holy name. Amen. All right, so we've alluded to this before about spiritual healing, and I want to remind you that this Dr. Frank Cutting Edge Medicine show is sponsored by O3 Plus. That's my health, wellness, and healing clinic here in San Antonio, Texas. Their phone number is 210-558-7778. And we are located right here in the Medical Center area, near the corner of Prue and Fredericksburg Road. There's a lot of things that we can do to help with your healing there. If you need it, whatever your condition is, if you can get an appointment with my nurse practitioner, Kim Engelman, she'll assess you. We always have to have a good assessment first so we know what we're treating and can give you a realistic estimation of what it might cost and what it would take to get your healing on the right road. You know, we don't want to stop the things that you're getting through your conventional medical doctors, but sometimes regular medicine, we just need more. And I mentioned before that healing probably comes mostly from the mitochondria. You know, the mitochondria need to produce energy for healing, for immunity, and what's left over is how much energy you feel. So if you're really tired, it's probably that we haven't got your mitochondria working well enough. But another problem that happens when you don't have enough healing or if you don't have enough energy is that you can develop cancer cells. You know, every day, we mentioned from the book, The Cancer Code by Dr. Jason Fung a couple of weeks ago, that it takes a lot for cancer to develop, a lot of mutations. Usually it takes many years for all that to happen. It could be induced by carcinogens. It could just be induced by our poor health, you know. So if we neglect our health and we have develop diabetes or poor nutrition, if we eat foods that are not good for us, that are perhaps adulterated by toxins, be they insecticides, which change our gut biome, or other chemicals that are all out there in some of the fertilizers and different things that they put on the food, that can totally change how our bodies react. There's a lot of foods, a lot of substances out there that are endocrine disruptors. And, you know, your endocrine system is your hormones. And if your hormones aren't good, that changes how your body handles a lot of things, including your immunity. So what we want to do is try to prevent cancer, of course. And we're going to try to do everything we can do on our regular medicine with our ozone clinic, but sometimes it's going to take something more like spiritual healing. So that's what we're going to talk about some today, since it's such a holy season. I want to start by recognizing Dr. Konstantin Katsanis. His first name, he went by the name of Gus. And he was practicing in Grapevine, Texas, and he died March 14th of this year. And this guy came over from Greece, and he was really dedicated. He dedicated his life to just healing and helping people to get well on all different fronts. He handled a lot of difficult conditions for people, Lyme disease, but a lot of it was cancer. In fact, I was going to take a course from him last September to learn about insulin potentiation therapy. Unfortunately, it got canceled because of COVID, and now he's deceased. So I have to see if I can learn that somewhere else. You know, the idea of it is that, and it was actually utilized years ago at MD Anderson. If you can stress the cancer cell by cutting off its easy access to sugar, then it becomes much more vulnerable to usual chemotherapy agents. And so you can use less of the chemotherapy agents and sometimes get away with less toxicity that way. So he used that, and he also used a lot of other things. But I remember we had a course from Dr. Schallenberger, who you've heard me talk about before, had a course about 2 or 3 years ago about his clinical pearls that he's learned over the last 40 years of medicine. And Dr. Katsanis happened to be talking at the following conference, and he had 7 steps for helping to slow down or heal cancer. And it struck me as surprising, at least initially, but his number 1 step was forgiveness. And it was to forgive yourself and to forgive others. And he expounded on that. And basically, if you have a lot of stress in your life because you are not loving, if you don't love yourself and you don't love someone else, you haven't been able to let go of a hurt that they caused, you expend a lot of energy on that negative emotion. And that's the energy that you need for coming from your mitochondria to help your immune system. So, you only get a limited amount of energy. We always want to try to increase that amount of energy with all kinds of energetic modalities. Ozone therapy is one. As you know, we talked about that. We're adding an electron or an extra oxygen molecule to regular oxygen so that it's more energetic, and that sticks into your double bonds in your body and stays with you for a while, also driving all kinds of very positive things in your body. We talked about pulsed electromagnetic field therapy, which does the same thing with magnetic fields. It's adding energy to your system. It works a little differently, but it's the same idea, adding energy to your system. Exercise adds energy to your system. When the actin and myosin fibers move across each other as your muscles are contracting, they shed electrons. Those electrons drive your production of more energy, and that's what keeps you healthy. Other things are just sunlight, being out in the sun. I mean, you're absorbing that energy from the sun, just like a plant does. If you eat good plants, those plants have absorbed the energy from the sun, and that gives you the energy as you metabolize those plants. Good sleep. You have to have good sleep so that you don't rob your body of energy. So all those different things. But his number 1 thing was forgiveness. So we wanted to remind everybody about that, and especially in this season of holiness, we want to have connectedness to one another because that's where the healing happens. It's been a difficult year, kind of a sad year with the COVID. We learned a lot. We learned how much we really do care about one another and depend on one another and want to be around one another. And it's kind of a inborn need for us. And you can call it, some people say, well, God has written his law in your heart. Some religions teach that God resides in your spirit. And in the way I like to look at it is one of the priests that I had talked to before talked about panentheism, where a little bit of God is in everything. You can see the beauty of God in a sunrise, a sunset, a beautiful flower, a bird, wildlife, but certainly also in other people. And, we're all created in the image of God, and each one of us has the capacity to love and to also heal other people. I want to emphasize that because you may have somebody in your family who needs healing today. So have you prayed with them? Have you hugged them? Have you given them comfort and encouragement? Have you touched them? The power of touch is incredible. You've heard about these different people who can heal with touch. And my feeling is that they're probably very good at shedding electrons. again, somehow they're giving you their energy, and that's helping to drive your energy and your healing ability. Maybe it's something else besides that, but anyway, we know that it helps, and we've seen a lot of examples of it. Let me go down these other steps that Dr. Katsanis had said are important for helping to heal cancer. We talked about forgiveness of yourself and others, good sleep, good nutrition. The good nutrition part, of course, we want more of a ketogenic diet if you can, combined with intermittent fasting. That seems to be some of the better things for inhibiting the growth of cancer cells. And of course, you would want to do all this with the knowledge and consent of your oncologist or your physician or your healthcare practitioner. Another area is dental care. You know, the Chinese meridians all go through the teeth, and if you have a bad tooth, there's some people who feel that that one tooth can knock out the normal electrical current in that Chinese meridian, and you're more likely to develop a cancer in the meridian that happens to go through that tooth. It's kind of a wild idea, but basically, if you want to get down to the root of the issue, go get your teeth checked and make sure that they're very in good shape. And if you have any pockets of infection or inflammation around the teeth, get those fixed. The next thing is things, again, that bring out more energy. So that's exercise, ozone, pulsed electromagnetic fields that we talked about. The next would be supplements to aid in detoxification. You know, your liver is super important for getting rid of a bunch of toxins. You need to make glutathione on a regular basis. Glutathione is a sulfur-containing amino acid, and that's super important for getting rid of all kinds of toxins. And in this day and age, why do we still have more cancer? Why do we have more sickness? It's most likely because we have more toxins in the environment, and we're not doing a very good job of getting rid of them. So also in this country, there's a fair number of people who have a mutation in a gene called MTHFR, methylene tetrahydrofolate reductase. Now that gene helps you to make, helps in your folic acid cycle and to methylate into the next part of the cycle, which involves homocysteine, and then it goes into making glutathione. So if you don't methylate well, because your gene is slow, then you will be less efficient at detoxifying, and you're going to get sicker sooner than other people. I've started checking this MTHFR gene on most of my patients with Lyme, fibromyalgia, just the ones who seem to be sicker, and sure enough, almost all of them have a defect in that gene. I think it's a pretty important gene, and the neat part is you can just bypass it with methylated B vitamins already. You need the active form of B6, which is pyridoxal 5-phosphate, B12, which is methylcobalamin, let's see, B6, B12, folic acid, you need methylfolate, and then you need a trimethylglycine, which is a methyl donor. They have these supplements available. We saw one in the ozone clinic called Methyl Charge. It's real easy. You just squirt 2 squirts in your mouth once a day, and it bypasses the stomach. It goes right in through your cheek, the inside of your cheek, and that way you can get these vital vitamins to bypass that potential defect, and then you can detoxify better. And then number 7 from Dr. Katsanis would be finally you get to specific anti-cancer therapies, including the insulin potentiation therapy. So, you know, there's just, he had a fair amount of success with very difficult patients. He got patients sometimes from MD Anderson when they said, well, there's not much more we can do. And then he was able to give them quality years after that. So it's an area that I want to keep exploring. I really feel like the solution to a lot of our problems is working together. You need the holistic doctors, the regular doctors, spiritual healers. You need everybody working together. So what is a miracle? Well, it's kind of when the unexplained happens. And you know exactly what it is when sometimes the doctors will just say, well, we've done everything we can do and there's nothing more that can be done. And then sometimes something unexpected happens. One of my earlier cases was a gentleman by the name of Tom, who I just every now and then I like to get a CAT scan of your abdomen. When you're in your middle years, if you have any symptoms at all, just to look for the asymptomatic tumors that could happen in your kidney or your pancreas. So we got one on this man because he happened to have belly pain, and the radiologist called and said, it looks like he has a pancreas cancer on the tail of his pancreas. And I said, well, is it pretty definitive? He said 95% positive that that's what it is. So I told the gentleman, and he says, oh, don't worry. My mom, I used to be in the seminary, and my mom has a bunch of prayer warriors, and we'll get them all praying for me, and everything will be fine. And I was totally amazed at his faith and his lack of stress and anxiety. He was calm. He just knew everything would work out. Well, anyway, I wasn't so sure. But anyway, we got him set up for a needle biopsy. And the radiologist called me afterwards, and he says, we stuck that needle into that mass, and it felt gritty like a tumor does. And we sent it down to the pathologist, and all they found was fat cells and pancreas cells that were normal. So we went back in and did it again, and all we found was the same thing, no tumor. And I said, wow, well, that's good news, I guess, unless you missed it. And he says, yeah, well, so we'll just do another scan in about 4 to 6 weeks and see if it's still there. So I told the patient, and he said, well, there you go. I knew it would be okay. And I said, well, not necessarily. I'm happy about this, but we need to confirm it with another CAT scan. And sure enough, in 6 weeks, we did another CAT scan, and the mass was gone. So it made me think, I wanted to be more of a spiritual healer at that point. I wanted to be able to tap into this ability to be able to help people heal from all the different areas, both regular medicine, holistic medicine, and spiritual healing, if possible. So I was talking to another priest who happened to be up in Fredericksburg, and I said, what I'd really like to do is become a better spiritual healer. I don't know how to learn it. And he says, well, you ought to go talk to this Dr. Issam Nemeh, Nemeh. And I said, well, who's this guy? And he says, he was on the Dr. Oz show. He's up in Cleveland, and he heals people with the Holy Spirit on a regular basis, but he's a doctor, and he's an anesthesiologist, actually. So as it turned out, I went up to see him, but first I watched the Dr. Oz show, which we will put on our webpage. Our webpage for the radio show is www.drfrankcuttingedgemedicine.com. And I'm going to post a link to what you're going to hear. There's 3 parts to it, but I'm just going to play a little bit of the first part. This is from 2014, and it's a Dr. Oz Healing Miracles is the name of it. Let me see if I can get it to play for you here.
This is a show unlike any other we have ever done before. For years, I've heard stories that fascinated me about this doctor in Cleveland. Thousands come to see and be touched by him. He doesn't perform surgery or prescribe drugs. Instead, he heals through prayer. And today, I want to ask the question, is he a faith healer or not? All of these people here today say that he's healed them. Now, you're going to meet them, and you're going to meet the doctor they say heals with his unshakable faith and his 2 hands. Now, I've seen things in my own practice that challenge what we know about medicine and healing. Could faith be the reason why the unexplainable happens? And can one man really use its power to heal? Meet Dr. Issam Nemeh. What he does might astound you.
Jesus. Since being with him, I have started noticing some movement of my legs and my feet, which I never had before.
He's gained a reputation for healing with his hands, but not in the way you would expect from a medical doctor.
Today I pray.
A trained anesthesiologist, he's bridging his medical beliefs
Everything's way better.
with his spirituality.
They come in with illnesses that we don't have answers for today in the mainstream.
He works in two ways, both in a medical office, where he treats his patients with a high-tech electrical form of acupuncture.
Do you feel any pain at all right now?
Not at all.
And in churches and meeting halls, where he heals people through the Spirit. Nemeh believes so strongly in his calling that he holds free healing sessions for anyone who is suffering. Hundreds, sometimes thousands come, and for many of them, the experience is nothing short of overwhelming. Some claim to be healed from conditions their doctors could do nothing about.
I woke up and my children were standing in the kitchen, and for the first time, I was able to see all three of their faces.
I knelt down next to my son in his wheelchair, and Ricky said, I like Dr. Nemeh. He said he makes me hot, but it's a good kind of hot. And we saw immediate changes.
I do not have MS anymore.
But there are skeptics who claim Dr. Nemeh's unconventional methods can't be scientifically verified.
I ask everybody that has doubt to come and witness.
But whatever's going on has some doctors intrigued, including our chief medical consultant, Dr. Mike Roizen.
This is a real phenomenon. There's something here, and I don't know whether it's what we in medicine call a placebo response. I don't know whether there's some absolute gift, but you see these people, and clearly they feel better.
I've had fibromyalgia since 78, and there's days I can't get out of bed. But when I'm around Doc, it goes away.
Dr. Nemeh candidly admits that there are no guarantees you'll be healed.
Of course, there's no guarantee. Otherwise, you'll be giving false hope.
He's been called a faith healer. But Dr. Nemeh insists there is a scientific basis behind what he does.
When you say faith healer, it means that you are excluding the science completely from it. And that's not my calling. My calling is to bridge that gap between science and spirituality.
Now, when I first heard these stories, they intrigued me. So when I met Dr. Nemeh, I asked him to bring me the medical records and scans. And he brought me this actual stack. This is the ones you gave me. We were in the office together. And I looked at them. And I showed them to my colleagues in my radiology department at my hospital. Our medical unit has investigated them. I've talked to my friend, Dr. Roizen. And I've talked to the patients and to their doctors. And it's interesting. And I'm intrigued by the whole process. So I want to open a door today and start talking about what's really happening here. Is it something that we need to take seriously? And if so, how do we evaluate it? So, Dr. Nemeh, thank you for joining us. So we taped the healing service. You can see it as I speak. And there was praying. There was laying on of hands, which it did to folks. I mean, these are provocative images. Explain to me, how does it work? How does someone who's being touched by you actually heal themselves?
There is a connectedness, I would call it. And science recently has been talking about that same phenomenon. There is no disconnection when it comes to everything that is.
So are you helping this person who's ill connect with an energy source outside of them? Are you the energy source?
I'm not the energy source, but we are part of the all. And when we have the right state of mind, then God does connect us together, and He does communicate things to me. I mean, I could feel the things happening within the body of those that I'm praying for. I'm not disconnected.
Well, before the show, we asked you, our audience here, how many of you believe that faith can heal? 86% of you said yes, which I must admit I was a bit surprised by. It's a fairly high number. Dr. Nemeh, we both went to medical school.
Yes.
Okay, so I'm going to have the rest of that on our webpage, and you can watch the rest of that part 1, and there's part 2 and part 3. Altogether, it's about 15 minutes. But as you can probably gather, I was rather intrigued with this whole idea. And a lot of what he said goes along with a lot of principles that a lot of different faiths believe, and that is that we are all part of the all. That, it's kind of an interesting thing. We are all supposed to be worshiping one creator or one great spirit, and instead we have I don't know how many different religious sects, and so everybody's, dissecting it into little pieces. But if we get back to the big picture, it's all about love and care for one another, and that's that state that he was talking about. When you're in the right state of mind, when you just want goodness and connectedness with others, that's when the healing happens. So what I did, I actually called Dr. Nemeh and asked them if I could come up and take him to dinner. He and his wife, Kathy, she's a delightful lady as well, and just find out more about how you do spiritual healing, And as it turned out, I just come off of a retreat, and I was feeling like anything could happen. And sure enough, she says, well, we never do this, but for some reason we feel like we should talk to you. So come on up. So my wife, Sherry, and I and my sister, Sue, went up there to visit with the Nemehs, and they were so gracious hosts, and they took us out to dinner. I was supposed to be taking them out to dinner, but anyway, we got to talk with them. And they are amazing people. You find these folks who have a special story, and certainly he's one of these people, because he was born in Syria. He knew from an early age, or at least his grandfather knew from an early age, that he would have some special connectedness with God, and he got a lot of messages from God or some spirit that what he should do with his life. He was going to be he was going to be a doctor, and he thought he was going to be a cardiovascular surgeon like his brother, but he got a message, no, you should be an anesthesiologist so you can spend more time healing with your patients. And so he learned his anesthesiology very well, but he kept, when he would pray with people, he would see these healings happen, and so he felt like he had to keep going down that path. And in 2005, I believe, he had a newscaster from the Cleveland area happened to be one of his patients, and this gentleman got better. I forget what his problem was. I think it was an arthritis that no one was able to really help. And when Dr. Nemeh prayed over him and did his acupuncture, electrical acupuncture, the man got better. So he happened to mention it on the evening news that Cleveland has a rare gift here in Cleveland, and he happens to be doing a free healing session that Sunday. And so all these people showed up at the church, and then his reputation grew. And of course, the man is extremely humble. At one point, his wife said, they wanted to know who were the top 3 most recognized people in Cleveland, and it was LeBron James, and then he was number 2. And Dr. Nemeh said, well, who's LeBron James? He didn't even know who LeBron James was. But anyway, he's really focused on just staying as spiritually connected as possible so he can help the most people as possible. So anyway, we talked about, how do you do the healing? And most of it was just that you have to connect with God, ask for healing, and then you pray and you expect whatever you're hoping for, and then you see what God has in store for you. It's still the same thing, it has to be part of God's will, but it never hurts to ask. It's just like with the gift of faith, you may not believe in God today, but if you're curious about this and you want to know more, all you have to do is ask God to reveal himself to you in some way, and see what happens. It's faith is you have to ask for it. It's not going to be pushed on you in any way. But once you get connected to a greater power, if you think about the miracle of your own body, your eyeball, for example, and all the intricacies of the eyeball, have rods and cones looking at, color in black and white. That's the other way around, black and white and color. But then you also have specialized cells there that help you to stimulate your melatonin or turn it off, depending on if it's light or not. the whole concept of the eyeball. We haven't really been able to make an artificial eyeball, even with all the technology that we have. We can put a CCD chip in there, but it's just not quite the same. And then you have the whole brain. Trying to make artificial intelligence. We're making progress, but it's very difficult, and especially when you look at something like cancer, it is so difficult to cure cancer. We can suppress it, but to actually cure something takes probably a higher power than we have, but it's all in concert. You have to do your part. My mom used to always say, if you get sick, yeah, you can just pray, but maybe God put the doctor in your path for a reason, and you should probably take the antibiotic in addition if you need an antibiotic. So you got to take cues from all around you, everybody that's trying to help you, as long as their heart is in the right place. Go with what they've got and see if it'll all fit together so that you can have a healing. So one of the things that we did up there was we went to a healing session, and my mom, for example, we didn't bring her along, but she was going to need to have cataract surgery. So during the healing session, he asked, who do you want us to pray for? And my sister said, well, here's my picture of my mom on the phone, and she has a cataract, so would you pray over her? And he did, and interestingly, when we got back, we really had a fantastic experience. There was a lot of very spiritual things that happened, things that you couldn't really have put together ahead of time that all just kind of seemed to mesh. But at any rate, when we got back, my mom went for her pre-op with the ophthalmologist, and he says, I don't really see enough of a cataract in here for us to do any surgery. I don't think you need any surgery. So that kind of brought it all home to me that something had happened here, because the doctor said, a month before that she needed cataract. So either they changed their mind or something good happened, but it didn't really matter to me as long as it was good and she could see and she didn't need to have a surgery. That was good for me. So I told this story to another patient of mine who had prostate cancer in somewhat of a remission, but he's always been worried about it, and he was traveling up in the Cleveland area, so he went by and got a visit with Dr. Nemeh. And during the healing, he said Dr. Nemeh was whispering things during the whole healing session, which lasted about an hour or so. And actually, all those whisperings is he's praying for healing and for discernment while he's examining you. But at any rate, at one point he says, Dr. Nemeh, would you do me a favor? And he says, what's that? And he says, would you pray over me? And he laughed and he says, I've been praying over you the whole time, but I'll do it out loud. So he put one hand behind his chest and one hand in front of his chest. And my patient said all of a sudden he just started feeling this warmth traveling between Dr. Nemeh's hands. And he says, Doc, I'm feeling a lot of heat in there. What is it? And he says, well, of course, that's the healing power of the Holy Spirit going right through you. That's what we want. So it's pretty awesome that, this man has developed this gift that he has to help heal. And it sounds like we all have the capacity in different amounts to help heal people. So I've gone to several other healing sessions with other spiritual healers to see how it all works. And most of them are pretty similar. You need to be as right with God and other people as possible. You need to forgive yourself and forgive others so that you have a clean, clear conduit for this power to travel through you. You don't have to be perfect. None of us are. And you can't feel bad that, you aren't perfect. You got to let go of all that and just know that you are exactly the instrument that God is wanting at this moment for his power to travel through you to the patient, to the person that you're trying to love and to heal. So, and then you just pray and then you see what happens. I think if more of us did that, you would see some amazing things happen. I know in this time of COVID, everybody's worried about touching people, getting close to people, but we need a lot more of that healing. So, again, if you just joined us, This is Dr. Frank, Cutting Edge Medicine Show. I'm Dr. Frank Miller in San Antonio. We're talking about spiritual healing today since it's during the holy seasons of springtime, Passover, and now Easter. Ramadan starts soon. By the way, in Ramadan, they do a lot of fasting, and we've talked about the benefit of fasting for your spiritual health and your physical health. We talked about the Prolon diet before. If you need any information of any of these things that we talk about, we have them in my ozone clinic, which is o3plustx.com, O3 Plus Texas. It's in the medical center area. The phone number is 210-558-7778. We use modalities like ozone, pulsed electromagnetic field, nutrition, IV nutrient therapy, exercising with oxygen, vibration therapy, all kinds of different things. So depending on what you have, we haven't been able to help you sufficiently enough with regular medicine, we'll try complementary medicine. We want to make sure it's okay with your physician or your healthcare practitioner, and we'll let you know exactly what we're going to do, what the risk and benefit is. You need to know it's not covered by any insurance, it's not FDA approved, and you have to sign a waiver for all that. And then we can see what can happen. A lot of these things are used in other countries for different types of healing. So we've been talking about miracles, and Dr. Nemeh's up in Cleveland. He does do Skype healing as well, and I'll have his contact information on our webpage, which is www.drfrankcuttingedgemedicine.com. But there's a place near us which is up there in Kerville, and it's called the Coming King Prayer Garden in Kerville, Texas. So if you've driven out I-10 towards Kerville, just as you come down the big hill, you look on the right-hand side, and there's a 77-foot, 7-inch cross on the right-hand side on top of a hill. Now, this was the product of primarily a sculptor by the name of Max Greiner, and he and his wife happened to be, he's a Baptist, went to A&M, and happened to be at a prayer session in Austin when this guy out of the blue says that, you're going to be creating a temple or a tabernacle to the Lord. And he thought the guy was crazy, of course. But as it turned out, then another guy came by and said, you will be creating a special prayer garden. And then in a dream, Max all of a sudden saw this prayer garden. And so he started to try and figure out how this would happen. He didn't know where it would be. He happened to be driving around in Kerrville, and all of a sudden he got this impulse that says there on that hill is where you will put this prayer garden. So he asked around to see who owned the land, and it happened to be a guy, I think he was over in Pipe Creek, and so he sent the guy some letters, hey, can we have your land for my prayer garden? He thought, heck, if God wants to do it, he has to donate the land. Well, sure enough, the guy actually was going to donate the land, and then his family said, wait a minute, that's an expensive piece of property. We want some money for it. And so Max tried to raise the money and only got about half of it done. And so they were nearing the end of their option to buy the land, and he got together 22 of his friends who were all in this together, and they got up on that little hill, and they made a little cross out of a cedar stick, and they prayed, God, if this is your will to have this garden, we need some money, and otherwise it's been fun, but I guess we'll go back to our own lives. And about at that moment, a scorpion charged the little cross, and his wife smashed the scorpion with her heel, and all of a sudden they saw these harrier hawks flying overhead. And so, as it turned out, one of the guys in the prayer circle had said a prayer that, God, I have enough money to help buy this hill for them, but I need a sign of a hawk in the sky. And right at that moment, then there appeared, I think they said 7 hawks in the sky. So he went over to Max and wrote him the check, and so they got the land. And then there was a lot of other interesting miracles that had to happen for the prayer garden to happen. But it's a very interesting place. It teaches you about the miracle worker Jesus, and it also tells how, from the Bible, how you're supposed to get miracles. And you can, read all that, learn about it if you want, take it if you want, or at least it's a very interesting place to visit. One of my favorite sculptures is showing basically 2 spikes versus 614 spikes. I think the 614 spikes were for all the laws of the Old Testament, and then the 2 spikes are the 2 laws of the New Testament, basically love God and love your neighbor as yourself. So anyway, I like it because it's inclusive of everybody. It's a nice garden, and special things have happened there. I'm going to play a audio now from one of my patients who was visiting up there and had some interesting things happen. Okay, today we're talking with a patient of mine, Sylvia Villarreal, who has had some very interesting experiences out at the Empty Cross in Kerville. So, Sylvia, first of all, thanks so much for talking with us today, and it's okay if we put this on the radio?
Absolutely.
Okay, so you had been involved with a group called Aglow. Can you tell us a little bit about what that is?
Yes, it's a women's organization. It's international. It's called Aglow International. It's a spirit-filled women's Christian organization, and we're in about over 70 countries of the world.
And I believe the first time you told me about that, you had been to a conference in Mexico, and I was astounded by the fact that there had been some relative maybe of yours who had not walked for a while, a teenage girl or something, and all of a sudden you felt consumed by the Holy Spirit to pray over her and tell her to get up and walk.
Yes.
And she was able to.
Yes, she was.
Is that
yes,
how
that
that
is
happened?
correct. Mm-hmm. Actually, it was my cousin, and we were visiting, and the day that we arrived, we were talking to her, and that evening, all of a sudden, she was like paralyzed and said, I can't walk, I can't straighten myself out. And they just led her to the bed, and she couldn't get up. Her back, it was just completely stiff, and she couldn't move, she couldn't do anything. And I just prayed about it. I felt like, well, this is not of you, Lord. And so I asked her, I said, if I could pray with her. Mm-hmm. And she said, absolutely. And so she got up, and she couldn't bend over. She couldn't do anything. She could not walk at all. And I said, in the name of Jesus Christ, walk. Mm-hmm. You and I just commanded her back to line up with the Word of God. And all of a sudden, she said she felt something from the very the base of her neck to the very bottom of her spine. And she felt like something going all the way down, and it came out, whatever it was. Something came out of her is how she described it. And she says, and all of a sudden the pain was gone, and she walked.
Wow.
And so that was really exciting, and she's never had a problem since.
So we're talking about spiritual healing because I feel like it's a really important part of people getting healthy. We do all the usual medical things, but so many times there seems to be an impediment in the healing. And I feel like it's, be it the touch of other people, the love of other people, God's love, the Spirit. There's something there that is missing on some people that you don't get. Until you do have that, you don't get the full healing. So, and then I mentioned I'd heard about this Empty Cross in Kerville from you, actually. You were the first one who told me about it. So tell me about your experience up there.
Well, it was an exciting experience. It was about 100 women that we were meeting. It's been several years ago, and we met in Kerville. We were going to have an Aglow retreat that weekend, and so we arrived on Friday, and my friends and I decided that we were going to have the worship service that evening there at the cross, but we had never been there, and we said, well, we arrived early, so let's take a walk, let's look at it. Had never been there before, wanted to know what it was all about, and so we were just going to take a tour on our own. It was 4 of us that went, and we were going to do this, and when we arrived, I was just amazed at the cross. It was just spectacular is the only way I can describe it. And my friends all decided to tour the grounds, But I, on the other hand, decided I just got under that cross. And I was going through some tough times at that time. And I just started praying and crying out to the Lord. I raised my hands up and I said, Lord, I need your help. And I just really, really felt the presence of God all over me. I could feel His presence, and I prayed and I cried out to Him, and I didn't think much of it. But I was there for quite a while praying. And finally, when I got through, my friends finished with their tour of the grounds. And so I met them. And when they saw me, they said, Sylvia, what happened to you? And I said, well, what do you mean? And I was wearing all black that day. And she said, you've got gold dust all over you from the top of your head to your clothes. Everything is covered with gold dust. I hadn't even bothered to look. And I looked down and I thought, oh, my gosh.
Well, was it something that would dust off?
No, it stayed on for 3 days. And it was, and again, I felt like something had happened there at the cross. And whatever, and maybe that was the manifestation of his presence, and I felt like what I was crying out for, He had heard me, He had answered my prayer, and all I know is that I had changed. I was a different person.
I remember you told me that at that moment you felt like you had an answer, that everything was going to work out,
yes.
And you didn't need to worry as much.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It was awesome. It was awesome. Then later on that evening, that's when our whole retreat met there at the cross. They have a place there. It's a sort of where people sit in a circle, and there were about 100 women, and we were all sitting in a circle. It was a beautiful, beautiful night. I'll never forget it. It was very, very clear. There was not a cloud in the sky. And like I say, there was about 100 women. And as we started worshiping the Lord, we were all singing with the worship leader, and it was awesome. And all of a sudden, we looked up and we saw this cloud coming, like I said, out of nowhere. It was a totally clear sky. And this cloud came, and it was like in a perfect circle the way we were. And it just came down, and it wasn't high up. It just seemed to come right above us and just hovered over us. And it lasted the whole time that we were in worship. And when the worship was over, the cloud lifted and it disappeared. Wow,
that's awesome. So like it was, 100 feet up or something like that?
Where the cross? Well,
where the cloud was?
Yes, it was just.
Not
it
very
seemed,
high.
No, it was just like right above our heads. It seemed like it was not. It was just really right over us, just hovering right over the 100 women.
Wow,
it was really awesome.
That is impressive. Did any of the other women experience the gold dust that you know of?
Not there that I know of. Nobody talked about it, so that I'm the only one that I know of. But I had heard that this was an occurrence, that it had to happen to other people. And in speaking to Max Greiner,
right.
He also said that he was aware of that.
So you talked with him as well?
Yes, I did. And he's very, very interesting. I'm sure you've talked to him.
Yes, and I've heard his CD, and it's just incredible. Actually, my sister-in-law got some gold dust on her.
Did she really?
After a family reunion we had 2 years ago, yeah. So that was pretty interesting.
Wow.
And, she was inspired and was praying over other people up there. I mean, it's just a very holy place, it seems to be.
I think so.
Yeah.
People's lives have literally been changed at the cross. And there have been a lot of healings take place, and it's just been awesome. It's an awesome experience.
Well, that's good, and that's what we want, is those healings to keep taking place.
Yes.
So people know they're not alone in this world. They have a God who cares about them, and once you tap into that power, and that power coming through other people especially, I think that's where all the healing really happens.
Yes, it's awesome. It really is. We serve a wonderful God. He loves all of us. He wants to touch each and every one of us and heal us and love us, and most of all, He wants us get to know Him in a very real and personal way. And that's possible for everyone.
Well, you're a great witness, and I really appreciate everything you've told us, and it'll be so nice to share this with everybody.
All right. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Pretty impressive, right? So you can see why I get excited about these spiritual healings, because these are just a sample of some of the things that patients have told me. So again, if you just joined us, you can get a recap of this entire show when you go to www.drfrankcuttingedgemedicine.com and click on radio shows, and you can get all this radio show and previous radio shows. We'll have links to the things that we talked about. Today we're going to have a link to the Dr. Oz show that we talked about Dr. Nemeh. We'll have a link to his webpage. We'll have a link to Max Greiner's webpage and the Coming King Prayer Garden in Kerville, Texas. And you can hear more about the glory dust. He wanted me to be sure that you know it is not gold. It's gold color, and it's called glory dust, or the Shekinah glory. You know, when Moses came down with the Ten Commandments, and he had a radiance about him as well. They think that maybe that's some of what this Shekinah glory was. I've been up to the Empty Cross, the Coming King Prayer Garden there. It is very spiritual. I didn't experience this glory dust, but I like hearing about everybody who has, and you'll hear about a lot of different miracles when you go up there. And so, you know, again, you probably know somebody who has been frustrated with whatever they're saddled with. We all have a cross to bear, as they say. Sometimes it's just emotional. Sometimes it's physical. You may be in chronic pain. You may have seen a whole bunch of specialists and nobody can seem to help you. So what we're trying to do is give you hope. Today, Easter Sunday, a very holy time of the year, regardless of what religion you have. You know, we just finished Passover, and as I mentioned, Ramadan's coming up. A lot of people just enjoy being in nature and feeling the power of the Creator just in nature. The Great Spirit, we're all actually more in unison with this awe of the Creator. And in order to have the healing, as we've said before, we need the power of touch. We need the power of loving of each other. So I encourage you now to try to work on that. Keep your mind open. If somebody that you know of is hurting or in need of healing, listen for your call and just step out of your box for a little bit, your box of comfort, and reach out and touch them. Try to share your energy with them, your love, your compassion, your care, your hope. The more people that pray together, the more energy we have, and I think the more healing we have. And all these acts of goodness and kindness will change the world. So, in addition, I want you to do all the things that we talked about before. You know, you need to have a healthy lifestyle, good sleep, good nutrition, regular exercise, de-stress, and detoxify. But in addition, your spiritual health is super important. I want to thank Dr. Katsanis for his life and for coming up with so many good ideas for helping to heal people. And I want to reemphasize his number one item was forgiveness of yourself and others. Don't get too caught up in guilt. We all make mistakes. And if you have things that need forgiveness for, well, forgive yourself and go forgive others, and then let's let it be and move on. You know, one of the things I always liked from the Bible was when Moses asked, you know, from the Ten Commandments. I was watching the movie the other day. It's like, well, who will I say that you are? And he says, well, I am. And that was his name, I am, because God is in the present. He's not in the past. He's not in the future. And we're not really supposed to be too worried about what we've done in the past. We want to be sorrowful and forgiven and then move on to the greater things in the future. But we don't have to worry about the future either. You know, one of the main the two most quoted or most mentioned words, certainly in the New Testament, is forgiveness and don't be anxious, and the reason those were mentioned so often is because that's what the humans tend to do, and they get hung up in it. So I want you to be free of guilt. Let's get forgiven, and then get out there and let's change some lives. Let's see some more miracles happening. We want spiritual healing of yourself and others, and the way that we do it, again, is to love and care for one another. And in the meantime, getting your body prepared for all that, please come on by our ozone clinic, 210-558-7778. Get some major autohemotherapy ozone to amplify your mitochondria and prepare your body for healing. Get some IV vitamins if you need them. We can add some pulsed electromagnetic field if you're having chronic pain, and put all that together with some good prayers, and let's see what kind of miracles we can have for you. That's about to wrap up this session. Next week, we're going to try to get into different body parts and find out from experts how to keep these different body parts in good shape. We'll start with the heart next week, if everything works right, and just kind of work through the body and find out how you can keep your body in top condition. I want to thank you for joining us today. This is, again, Dr. Frank Miller, Cutting Edge Medicine, DRFRANK, cuttingedgemedicine.com, sponsored by O3 Plus Texas. I wish you a very happy and holy week, and lots of spiritual healing, and we'll see you next week. Thanks for being here.